All right, let's just get right into it. This is the question that's on everyone's mind in tech. Maybe it's even keeping you up at night. Is AI really coming for our jobs as software engineers? I mean, it feels like every single day there's a new headline about layoffs, and AI is always the reason they give. Today, we're going to cut through all that noise and take a look at what is actually going on.
And you know the story I'm talking about. It's simple, and to be honest, it's pretty scary. It goes something like this. AI is just getting so good, so incredibly fast, that companies don't need as many human engineers anymore. The idea is that the machines can now code for themselves, which is leading to these huge, unavoidable job losses across the entire industry. And you see this everywhere, right? The big tech giants, Meta, Microsoft, Alphabet, they've all announced massive layoffs. And the official justification is often something like AI optimization. That's the narrative that's dominating the news cycle. And look, it makes sense why everyone's so anxious. But here's the thing.
Is this whole strategy of just swapping out humans for AI, is it actually delivering results for these companies? Because when you start to look past the press releases, when you dig into the real-world operations, a very, very different and honestly a much more complicated picture starts to emerge.
So first up, let's talk about what happens when AI fails, and fails big time. We're going to look at a case study of what happened when Amazon basically forced its engineers to go all in on their internal AI tools, and the absolutely catastrophic results that followed.
So, back in late 2024, Amazon made this huge internal push. They mandated that 80% of their engineers had to use these internal AI tools every single week. And this wasn't some friendly suggestion, okay? This was written directly into their KPIs, their key performance indicators. Your job performance, and maybe your job itself, literally depended on hitting that number. And here's how that played out. Just a year later, an engineer working on the AWS Cost Explorer dashboard hits a bug. They consult an internal tool called Kuro AI. And its suggestion? Well, to fix the bug, you should just delete the entire production code and start over from scratch. Now, under that intense pressure to meet the KPI mandate, the engineer actually followed the AI's advice.
The result of that one single AI suggestion was a 13-hour outage. 13 hours! That's a critical system just gone, causing total chaos and costing an unbelievable amount of money. And believe it or not, that was just the beginning of their problems.
The consequences were just staggering. The dashboard for the entire AWS China region went completely dark. Later on, in other incidents involving a different AI, 1.6 million website errors were logged. And at one point, 99% of North American orders just vanished into thin air. The total count from these AI-driven failures, 6.3 million lost orders. This just goes to show the massive gap between a tool working in a cool demo and working in the messy real world.
Okay, so the Amazon story is dramatic for sure, but is it just a one-off, an outlier? Let's move away from just one story and look at the hard data. Let's check out AI's real-world report card when it comes to complex software tasks. And here's really the heart of the issue. You hear these companies claiming their shiny new AI tools can automate or solve like 70 to 80% of engineering tasks. But when Scale AI benchmarked the world's top models on real industry-grade software problems, the results were kind of shocking. In reality, they could only successfully solve about 20 to 30% of them. That is a huge gap between the hype and the reality.
So you have to ask, why is this happening? Well, it's because real-world code bases are messy. You know what I mean? They've got years of patches, countless different developers, all these hidden dependencies. A human engineer, you can analyze that, you can understand that context. But current AI models, they're essentially just statistical prediction machines. They just can't grasp that bigger picture.
And you know what? This isn't just a coding problem. A Forrester survey actually found that 55% of executives regret replacing humans with AI and other areas too. The perfect example is the company Klarna. They laid off 700 customer support staff for an AI chatbot. They were celebrating all the cost savings. And then their CEO had to come out and publicly admit they went too far because customer satisfaction just fell off a cliff.
Okay, so if AI isn't really ready to replace engineers, then what are the real reasons for all these layoffs we keep seeing? What's actually going on behind the curtain?
Well, according to the analysis, it really boils down to two main things, and neither of them is AI is doing the job now. The real reasons are what we can call the shield and the cost shift.
So the first reason is that AI has become this super convenient shield. A lot of tech companies, they hired like crazy during the pandemic boom, right? And they based those decisions on predictions about the future that just turned out to be wrong. Now they're overstaffed and they need to correct it. It sounds a lot better for your stock price to say you're restructuring for AI than it does to admit, oops, we messed up and hired way too many people.
Now, the second reason, and this one is even bigger, is the cost shift. The big tech giants are locked in this incredibly expensive AI arms race. We're talking billions and billions of dollars in AI infrastructure and research. Well, that money has to come from somewhere. So think about it. They aren't laying people off because AI has successfully replaced them. They're laying people off to fund the development of that exact same AI.
Okay, so that helps explain the why behind the layoffs. But now for the really big question. What does all this mean for the future? What is next for the tech job market?
Well, here is some good news. If you actually look at the data for software development job openings, the trend is pointing up. Now, we're not back at those crazy peak levels we saw before COVID just yet, but the market is recovering and the demand for engineers is steadily on the rise again.
But the market has changed. Right now, the demand is highest for mid-level and experienced engineers. Those are the people who can navigate those super complex, messy code bases we were talking about. The market is definitely tougher for entry-level roles because, let's be honest, the simple boilerplate tasks that junior engineers often do, those are precisely the things that current AI tools are actually pretty good at.
However, there is a really important long-term trend to think about. As AI makes building software more efficient and more accessible, the whole industry grows. More businesses that could never afford to build software before are now coming online. This means the entire pie is getting bigger, which, in the long run, should create more demand for software engineers at all levels.
And I think it's important to ground this conversation in the technology's actual limitations. Meta's chief AI scientist, Yann LeCun, this guy is a pioneer in the field. He's basically said that the current approach of just making these models bigger and bigger is hitting a wall. It is not a path to true human-level intelligence that can handle context and reason and understand consequences.
So the really crucial takeaway from all of this is that AI should be seen as an incredibly powerful tool. It can boost our efficiency, automate the boring stuff, and really augment a developer's workflow. It's an assistant. It's a co-pilot. It's not a replacement for the critical thinking and the deep analysis that a human engineer brings to the table.
And ultimately, that reframes this whole conversation, doesn't it? The fear of replacement, it's misplaced. The real challenge and the real opportunity is figuring out how we're going to master these new tools, how we integrate them into our work, and how we leverage them to build bigger and better things than we ever could before. The future is not about being replaced, it's about building with a much, much more powerful toolkit.